It began on an icy December morning in 1993 in the small town of Grey Ridge, Pennsylvania, a place that looked peaceful on the surface but held a rot beneath its quiet streets. The kind of town where everyone waved at each other when nothing bad was ever supposed to happen until it did. On that morning, the police received a 911 call from a trembling 16-year-old girl. Her name was Lily Carver. Her voice was faint, almost hollow, as she whispered, "My stepdad, he's not moving." When officers arrived, the living room looked like a slaughterhouse. A man later identified as Daniel Carver, 42, an auto mechanic, and well-liked in the community, lay sprawled on the carpet, his skull fractured, blood smeared across the linoleum like dark paint. The girl sat nearby, her face pale and streaked with tears. She looked like the picture of shock, but something about her eyes, something in them didn't match the trembling tone of her voice. They were still, too calm. Before we go deep into this chilling story, I want you to take a moment, look around you. What time is it where you're watching from? Night? Early morning? If it's dark outside, turn off your lights. Let yourself feel this story. Because this isn't just a tale of murder, it's a descent into the twisted corners of a young girl's mind. One that planned, waited, and executed something so horrifying it would leave even seasoned detectives shaken to their core. At first, the police assumed a break-in. The back door was broken, and shards of glass scattered across the kitchen tiles. But the pattern was wrong. The glass had fallen outward, not inward, meaning it had been smashed from inside the house. That small detail was the first crack in Lily's story. She told investigators she had woken up to screams, ran downstairs, and found her stepfather lying in a pool of blood. Her mother, Margaret Carver, was away that weekend visiting her sister. Lily had been home alone with Daniel. She sobbed through the interview, saying she didn't understand why anyone would hurt him. Yet her tone carried a faint chill, like someone performing grief rather than drowning in it. The lead detective, Eleanor Graves, a veteran with 20 years in homicide, later said, "There was something about that girl. She didn't seem scared, she seemed satisfied." As the coroner examined the body, a chilling discovery emerged. Daniel hadn't died quickly. There were signs of struggle, bruises on his arms, defensive wounds on his hands. The fatal blow came from a blunt object, but none was found at the scene. The living room had been rearranged, wiped, cleaned, then smeared again with fake chaos. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It was deliberate, planned. But who would do this to Daniel Carver, a man described by his co-workers as kind, quiet, and hardworking? His neighbors swore he never had enemies, except maybe one, the stepdaughter who had never truly accepted him. Weeks before the murder, classmates said Lily had grown darker, withdrawn. She'd been seen writing something in a black notebook during lunch breaks, pages filled with disturbing sketches and phrases like, "He deserves to choke on what he's done." When the police searched her room, that notebook was gone, vanished. In its place was a stack of neatly folded clothes, a meticulously cleaned desk, and a faint smell of bleach lingering in the air. Eleanor Graves knew that kind of smell too well. It meant something had been scrubbed clean, maybe blood, maybe guilt. What the town didn't know yet was that Lily's life had been far from normal. Her biological father, a long-haul trucker, died in a mysterious accident when she was 9. Her mother remarried Daniel 2 years later. For a while, things looked picture perfect, a new family, a stable home, but neighbors noticed Lily rarely smiled. She'd often sit on the front porch, staring into nothing, as if calculating something unseen. When Daniel tried to discipline her, even mildly, she'd look at him in a way that unsettled him deeply. Margaret once confided to a friend, "Sometimes I catch Lily watching him, like she's studying prey." Detectives soon found Daniel's personal diary in his workshop. His last entry, dated just 3 days before his death, read, "She's watching me again. Last night I woke up and she was standing in the hallway, just standing there, smiling. I don't know what she wants, but I can feel something's coming." That entry sent chills through the investigative team. If Daniel had sensed danger, why hadn't he done anything? Maybe he didn't want to believe his fear. Maybe he thought she was just a troubled teenager acting out. But by then, Lily's mind had already crossed the line between fantasy and reality. A week into the investigation, forensic analysis revealed faint traces of blood under Lily's fingernails, though she claimed it came from trying to shake Daniel awake. Her fingerprints were found on the inner side of the broken glass door, the supposed entry point for the intruder. Slowly, her story began to crumble. When confronted, Lily didn't cry or shout. She tilted her head slightly, like a cat watching a mouse squirm, and said, "You think I did this? That's funny." The calmness in her tone made the air in that interrogation room feel heavier. Behind her pale face was a festering hatred, built over years of quiet resentment. Daniel had tried to be a father, but he was strict. He grounded her, took away her phone, limited her outings. What he didn't realize was that he wasn't dealing with a normal teenager, he was dealing with something colder. Lily had grown fascinated with serial killers and psychological horror. She kept clippings of news articles about family murders. In one of her old essays, her teacher found the line, "There's no bond stronger than blood unless you spill it." The investigation took a darker turn when police found a burnt metal pipe behind the shed in the Carver's backyard. It was stained with what appeared to be dried blood. DNA confirmed it matched Daniel's. The murder weapon had been hidden but poorly. It was as if Lily wanted them to find it, as if she was playing with them, stretching the fear, savoring the game. When questioned about it, she smiled faintly and said, "Maybe he did it to himself." Detective Graves described that moment as the one where she knew beyond doubt that this wasn't just a crime of passion or rage, it was an act of control. The kind that comes from a mind that understands pain not as something to avoid, but to inflict. Yet what they didn't know then was why. What could drive a 16-year-old to plan the brutal murder of the man who had raised her for years? That answer would come later from a place no one expected. A diary hidden inside the vent of Lily's bedroom. It would reveal the truth behind her hatred, the secret that turned a girl into a monster. But before that truth came out, another body would be found, and the case would twist into something even darker. 2 weeks after Daniel Carver's funeral, the town of Grey Ridge began to breathe again, or at least they tried to. The church bells had stopped ringing. The candles outside the Carver home had melted into wax puddles, and people whispered that maybe it had been a tragic accident after all. But Detective Eleanor Graves wasn't convinced. Something about Lily lingered in her mind. It wasn't just the calmness or the eerie composure, it was the way Lily watched people when they spoke, her eyes flicking over their expressions like she was dissecting emotions she couldn't feel herself. Graves knew that look. She'd seen it before in people who killed not out of anger, but out of curiosity. People who wanted to know what it felt like to end a life. Then came the second call. A local maintenance worker found a decomposed cat carcass inside a sealed wooden box behind the old water tower, not far from Lily's school. Inside the box was a folded piece of paper. The writing on it was unmistakable, neat, slanted, the same loops and curls from Lily's school assignments. It read, "Sometimes you have to practice first." The find sent shockwaves through the investigation team. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a prelude. When they brought Lily back for questioning, she didn't even flinch. "You think that's new?" she said coldly. "Maybe you should look deeper." Those words weren't a denial. They were a challenge. Detective Graves authorized a deeper forensic search of the Carver property. Dogs were brought in, sniffing through the soil around the shed, the flower beds, the crawl space. What they uncovered made even veteran officers pale. Underneath the wooden deck, buried in a shallow grave, was a small, mummified skeleton later identified as Lily's pet rabbit, missing for over a year. The bones had been carefully arranged in a circle, with rusted nails placed around the skull. It wasn't random, it was ritualistic. And in that moment, the theory shifted. Maybe this wasn't just about hate or revenge. Maybe it was something darker, an obsession with control, with power over life and death. As investigators dug through Lily's past, a portrait of her psyche began to emerge. Teachers recalled her as brilliant but strange. A girl who excelled in anatomy and biology, who once told her class that she wanted to know what makes the heart stop beating. Her therapist, whom she'd seen briefly after her father's death, described her as emotionally detached, unable to empathize with others. When asked about her stepfather, she had said simply, "He took what was mine." The therapist never understood what she meant, but that line would later take on terrifying meaning. At night, Detective Graves sat in her office reading Lily's case file under the weak glow of a desk lamp. She couldn't shake the image of Daniel's final diary entry, or the phrase, "She's watching me again." Graves thought of her own daughter, same age, same bright eyes, and wondered how someone so young could hold so much darkness. But what haunted her most was the sense that Lily wasn't done, that the killing of Daniel Carver wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Then came the break they needed. During a second search of Lily's room, a forensics technician noticed loose paint around an air vent behind her bed. When they unscrewed it, a small notebook fell out. The first few pages were drawings, grotesque faces, bleeding hearts, dissected bodies. But the later pages, they were a blueprint. Dates, times, notes about Daniel's work schedule, when her mother was out of town, the best time to strike, how to stage a break-in. Every detail of the murder was there, planned down to the minute. At the bottom of the final page was a line that froze everyone in the room. Step 1 complete. Step 2 begins when she knows. She was Margaret Carver, Lily's mother. And suddenly, the detectives realized the horrifying truth. Lily wasn't done. She was planning to kill her own mother next. Police rushed to the Carver house, where Margaret had just returned from her sister's. When officers arrived, they found her sitting in the living room, trembling. Lily was in her bedroom upstairs, quiet as a whisper. On the coffee table was a half-written note addressed to Margaret. "You never believed me. You chose him over me. You'll understand soon." That night, Lily was taken into custody for her stepfather's murder before she could strike again. But what she said during interrogation would scar every officer present. When Graves asked her why she did it, Lily smiled faintly and whispered, "Because he touched what wasn't his." The room fell silent. Graves leaned forward, her voice low. "Are you saying he hurt you?" Lily tilted her head, eyes glittering under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Does it matter now?" That sentence changed everything. The investigation suddenly turned inward. Could there have been abuse? Had Daniel Carver been more than just a strict parent? There were no reports, no confessions, no witnesses. But Lily's diary hinted at something sinister, phrases like, "He comes to my room when the house is asleep, and she pretends not to hear." For a while, the town split in two. Some saw Lily as a monster, others as a victim pushed to madness. But Detective Graves couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Lily's emotions didn't match a survivor's trauma. There was no fear in her, no relief, just emptiness. And that made her even more terrifying. When prosecutors built their case, They focused on the overwhelming evidence, premeditation, motive, forensic proof. But Lily refused to speak about the alleged abuse again. During trial, she sat silent, expressionless, eyes fixed on the floor. The courtroom murmured when the notebook was read aloud. The words were too calculated, too cold. She hadn't just killed her stepfather, she'd studied it like an experiment. The prosecutor described it best. Lily Carver didn't act out of impulse. She performed the rehearsal of death. As testimony unfolded, new evidence emerged. Daniel's best friend, a mechanic named Carl Weston, revealed that Daniel had confided in him about problems with Lily, saying she'd threatened him more than once. "She told me she could make people disappear," Daniel had told Carl. "I thought she was just being a kid. Guess I was wrong." The jury listened in stunned silence. Every word painted Lily not as a victim but as a predator in plain sight. But the trial wasn't over, because during its final week, something chilling happened inside the county detention center. A guard found a crude drawing carved into the concrete wall of Lily's cell, a drawing of her mother's face with a knife through the throat. Below it were the words, "Step 2 never dies." Detective Graves knew then that the danger wasn't over, that even behind bars, Lily Carver's story wasn't finished. And when Margaret Carver disappeared 3 months later, the town realized how right she was. The morning Margaret Carver vanished, Grayridge woke to a thick fog that clung to the streets like breath on glass. The news hit before sunrise. Her car had been found abandoned at the edge of Ravenwood Creek, keys still in the ignition, driver's door wide open. No footprints, no struggle, no blood, just silence. The same kind of silence that had haunted the town since Daniel's death. For Detective Eleanor Graves, it was déjà vu, a feeling that something had circled back to finish what it started. Margaret's disappearance wasn't random. It was methodical, calculated, the way Lily Carver would have done it. But Lily was locked up, or so everyone thought. The police scrambled to piece together Margaret's last movements. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed her filling up a car around 9:20 p.m. the previous night. She looked tired, distracted, glancing over her shoulder several times. At one point, she leaned against the car door, wiping her eyes. The attendant later told officers she seemed terrified, like she was running from something. In the footage, a black sedan appeared briefly in the background, headlights off, parked near the curb. It wasn't clear who was inside. That car vanished minutes before Margaret drove away and was never identified. Meanwhile, inside Grayridge Juvenile Detention Center, Lily was still as stone. She hadn't spoken in days. Her silence unnerved even the guards. She'd sit on her cot for hours, tracing invisible patterns in the air with her fingers. When Graves arrived to question her about her mother's disappearance, Lily smiled faintly, that same slow, predatory smile that had once chilled her to the bone. "You came to ask if I did it," she said softly. "But how could I, Detective? I've been right here." Graves pressed harder, but Lily only whispered, "You don't need to touch someone to make them disappear. Fear does the work for you." That night, Graves couldn't sleep. The phrase echoed in her head, "Fear does the work for you." What if Lily had orchestrated this from the inside? What if someone else was carrying out her step 2? When they searched Margaret's home again, they found something new, a letter hidden inside a picture frame on her nightstand. The handwriting was Lily's. The letter read, "You chose him over me. You let him in when I begged you to stop. Don't worry, Mom. It'll all end where it began, by the water." That single sentence changed everything. It wasn't just confession, it was prophecy. The creek where Margaret's car was found was the same place Daniel used to take Lily fishing when she was younger. It was where she'd once fallen in, and he had pulled her out. Maybe that was why she chose it: symbolic, full circle, poetic. in the most twisted way. The search expanded downstream, and after 3 days, divers found what they'd feared. A body tangled in reeds, weighted down by stones. It was Margaret Carver. But the autopsy told a story that made even seasoned investigators sick. Margaret hadn't drowned. She'd been dead before she hit the water, strangled with a cord made from braided hair, human hair. The DNA matched Lily's. But how could that be? She'd been behind bars for months. Unless the evidence was planted, unless someone else had done it for her. Graves ordered an immediate review of prison surveillance, and what they found was even more disturbing. A nurse on night duty, a woman named Sandra Lowe, had been visiting Lily's cell after lights out, bringing her sketchbooks, paper, even mail. The footage showed Sandra spending long stretches in the cell, speaking quietly, sometimes holding Lily's hands. When interrogated, Sandra broke down. She confessed that she'd been manipulated. Lily had convinced her that she was misunderstood, that her stepfather had been abusive, that her mother had let it happen. Sandra, a single mother herself, had felt pity for the girl. Over weeks, Lily had gained her trust, her sympathy, and then her obedience. She'd written letters for Lily, mailed them, carried messages outside. Letters meant for someone Lily referred to only as the helper. Phone records showed that Sandra had made multiple calls, from the infirmary phone to an unlisted number in a nearby county. When traced, that number led to a man named Jonas Reed, a 30-year-old drifter with a criminal record for assault and stalking. In his apartment, police found shrine photos of Lily cut from newspapers, drawings of her face, letters signed with hearts, and the words, "Do it for me." Jonas had been the one watching Margaret. He'd been the one driving that black sedan. And when police stormed his apartment, Jonas was gone. Days later, hikers found his body hanging from a tree deep in the woods, his wrists slashed, a note pinned to his chest. The note read, "She told me it was the only way to be with her." It was signed with the letter L. Grayridge was spiraling into hysteria. How could a teenage girl, locked in a juvenile center, orchestrate 2 murders? But Detective Graves understood now. It wasn't about distance, it was about control. Lily had manipulated Jonas through letters, through promises, through whatever charm she used to crawl under people's skin. She didn't need to touch her mother to kill her. She just needed to plant the seed and let it grow. Still, something about the timeline didn't add up. When forensic techs examined Jonas's body, they found one final clue, a locket hanging around his neck. Inside was a tiny photograph of Lily as a child and a fresh strand of hair. Too fresh, too new. DNA confirmed it was Lily's, but the follicle was still alive, meaning it had been cut recently after she was already in custody. Someone had smuggled it out for her. And there was only one person who could have done that, Sandra Lowe. Under pressure, Sandra confessed again, but this time the story changed. Lily hadn't just manipulated her emotionally. She'd threatened her. She'd written a note describing Sandra's 6-year-old son, his name, his school, even the route he took home. She'd whispered through the cell door, "If you don't help me, I'll make him disappear too." Sandra said she'd never seen such darkness in anyone's eyes, not even in hardened criminals. She did what Lily asked out of sheer terror. "It was like she could see inside my head," Sandra sobbed. "She knew exactly what I was afraid of." For Graves, it was clear now. Lily Carver was more than a murderer. She was a manipulator of minds, a predator who could twist pity into obedience, fear into worship. But even knowing that didn't stop the nightmare, because as the trial for Margaret's murder approached, Lily began to write again, pages and pages of letters. Only this time, they weren't addressed to Jonas or Sandra. They were addressed to Detective Eleanor Graves herself. The first line of the first letter read, "You think you caught me, but I've only just begun." Detective Eleanor Graves stared at the letter, long after the others had left the room, her hands trembling slightly under the dim light. Lily's handwriting was elegant, deliberate each curve and line crafted with unsettling precision. The ink was smudged at the edges, as if touched by fingers that lingered too long, savoring each word. The letter went on for pages, detailing things that only someone who had studied her would know. Graves's childhood home, the name of her late husband, even the park where her daughter liked to play after school. None of that information had ever been made public. Someone was feeding Lily information from the outside, someone still loyal. But what chilled Graves the most wasn't what Lily knew it was, what she predicted. The final line read, "You come to understand what my mother did, that sometimes love is the first lie that kills you." Graves tightened security around her family, but sleep became impossible. Every creak of her floorboards felt like an echo of Lily's voice. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. The case files filled her desk, photographs of the victims staring up like open eyes. Daniel, Margaret, Jonas, all gone, all connected by a web that led straight back to that girl behind the glass. But how deep did her reach go, and how many others were already in her grip? Inside the detention center, Lily was being transferred to a higher security facility after the discovery of the letters. On the day of the move, a heavy rain soaked the world in gray, thunder rumbling like an omen. 2 guards escorted her down the corridor, shackles clinking against the tile. Lily didn't resist. She walked calmly, almost serenely, her lips curved in that faint, knowing smile. When they reached the exit, one of the guards, a new recruit, paused to adjust his radio. Lily turned to him and whispered, "You look tired. Do you dream about your mistakes?" The man froze. He would later tell investigators that, for a split second, he felt like the air had been sucked out of the hallway. Something about her tone, her eyes, it was like being looked through, not at. That night, before Lily's transfer could be completed, the power at the facility failed. Cameras blinked out, alarms glitched, and for 27 minutes, the detention block was plunged into total darkness. When power was restored, Lily's cell door stood open. Inside, on the cot, lay her orange jumpsuit neatly folded beside a small piece of paper. It said only, "Step 3. A statewide manhunt began immediately. Checkpoints, roadblocks, helicopters sweeping over woods and highways. But there was no trace of her. It was as if she dissolved into the rain. The warden resigned within days, unable to explain how a teenage girl could vanish from a locked facility without a single camera catching her. Rumors spread. Some said she'd bribed a guard. Others whispered she'd been helped by someone higher up. But Detective Graves had a different theory. She believed Lily had never truly escaped, at least not in the way everyone thought. "She's still here," Graves said to her team, pointing to her temple. "She's where she's always been, inside people's heads." Weeks passed, then months. The town tried to heal again, but fear had taken root too deeply. Children whispered about the stepdaughter, like she was a ghost story, a shadow that crept through their dreams. Sightings poured in from across the state. A girl with long dark hair seen near gas stations, abandoned farms, schoolyards, none confirmed, all unsettling. And then, in late autumn, Detective Graves received another envelope, no return address. Inside was a photograph of a young woman standing in front of a diner in Ohio. Her hair was shorter, bleached blonde, her clothes different, but the eyes were unmistakable. Lily Carver. On the back of the photo was scrawled, "Miss me?" Graves drove 6 hours straight to that diner, accompanied by a small team. They arrived after midnight, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the drizzle. The place was nearly empty, just a trucker and a waitress cleaning tables. Graves showed the photo to the waitress, who froze. "Yeah," she said quietly. "She was here. Real polite, sweet even. Asked if we were hiring. Then she added something that made Graves' stomach drop. She had a little girl with her, maybe 3, 4 years old, called her Rosie. A child? That couldn't be possible. Lily had been in custody nearly 2 years. Was it her daughter? A hostage? No one knew. But a note left under the diner's register made things clear. It read, "She'll never have to feel what I felt." DNA tests later confirmed the little girl was indeed Lily's biological child, but the father's identity was never found. Some speculated it was Jonas Reed before his death. Others whispered that Lily had used someone else, maybe coerced, maybe fooled, just to create another piece in her macabre puzzle. The next months became a blur of leads and false sightings. Every town seemed to claim her ghost. Some said she was living under a new name, others that she joined a religious commune or died in the woods. But Graves refused to believe she was gone. The pattern wasn't over. Lily's crimes had always followed steps deliberate, ritualistic, and step 3 had yet to be revealed. The detective pored over every letter, every diary page, every drawing. Somewhere, hidden between Lily's words, had to be the key. Then it happened. In February 1996, a small house fire broke out on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. When firefighters arrived, they found 2 bodies inside, a man and a woman, both bound to chairs, throats slit. On the wall, written in soot, were the words, "Family is forever." The handwriting was Lily's, but the child, Rosie, was nowhere to be found. The victims were later identified as a married couple, Charles and Elaine Porter, both psychologists. They'd run a private counseling center that specialized in trauma recovery for children. One of their clients, years earlier, had been a young girl under a pseudonym registered as LC. The session notes, recovered from the charred filing cabinet, revealed something haunting. Subject expresses no empathy, exhibits fascination with human suffering. When asked about morality, responds, "Morality is for people who can feel." It was Lily, and she had come back to silence the only people who had ever understood what she truly was. For Graves, this was the turning point. She wasn't chasing a fugitive anymore, she was chasing a legacy. Lily had transcended the boundaries of a normal criminal. She wasn't just killing for revenge anymore. She was proving something, crafting her own twisted narrative. Each step was a statement, each victim a symbol. Step 1, her abuser. Step 2, her betrayer. Step 3, those who tried to define her. But what was next? What would step 4 be? Graves feared she already knew the answer. Winter crept over Pennsylvania like a shroud. The snow came early that year, thick, heavy, muting every sound. Detective Eleanor Graves stood by her window, watching flakes drift past the glass, her breath clouding the pane. It had been nearly a year since the Porter murders, and still no trace of Lily Carver or the missing child. The media had begun to call Lily the stepdaughter phantom. Talk shows speculated endlessly. Some claimed she'd joined a cult. Others swore she'd been killed and replaced by copycats. But Graves couldn't shake the feeling that Lily was still watching, still planning, waiting for the next move. The letters hadn't stopped. They came sporadically, always from different states, always postmarked days before any sighting. Each was cryptic riddles, written like love poems, twisted with venom. "You look for me in the world, but you should look in the mirror," one read. Another, "We're not so different, you and I. You hunt ghosts, I make them." Graves burned most of them, but she kept a few locked away, studying them in sleepless nights. Over time, a pattern began to emerge, hidden references to specific towns, old case files, forgotten names. Each clue pointed toward one chilling conclusion. Lily wasn't just revisiting her past, she was rewriting it. Then came the phone call, a woman's voice, shaky, terrified. "Detective Graves." "My name's Carol Finch. I think she's here," the line crackled. Carol lived in a small town outside Cleveland, Ohio, and claimed her new tenant matched Lily's description exactly. "She said her name was Anna," Carol whispered. "She's got a little girl, sweet kid. But last night, I heard her talking to someone. There was no one else in the house. And then I saw her burying something in the yard." Within hours, Graves was on the road again, heart pounding with that old familiar mix of dread and duty. The address was an isolated farmhouse surrounded by skeletal trees. By the time she arrived, the place was silent, the air heavy with the metallic scent of snow and something else, something faintly rotten. Her flashlight beam cut through the dark as she moved toward the backyard. The ground was freshly disturbed, mounds of earth glistening under frost. She knelt, brushing the snow aside, until her gloved fingers struck something solid, a small box. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Children, families, smiling faces, and all of them had their eyes scratched out. Then, a voice behind her. "Looking for me again, detective?" Graves spun around, gun raised. There she was, Lily Carver, older now, maybe 20, her hair pale blonde, face gaunter, but eyes exactly the same, piercing, hollow, ancient. And beside her, clutching a worn teddy bear, stood the little girl, Rosie. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The snow fell in perfect silence. Then Lily smiled faintly. "You shouldn't have come alone." A shadow moved in the doorway behind her. Another person, tall, male, face hidden beneath a hood. Graves's pulse spiked. "Who's that?" she demanded. Lily tilted her head. "Someone who knows what it's like to lose control." The man stepped forward, and the light revealed his face. It was the correctional officer from the detention center, the one Lily had spoken to years ago. His eyes were vacant, as though whatever made him human had been replaced. "You see," Lily whispered, circling Graves slowly. "They always find me, the broken ones, the ones who've seen through the lie. I don't make monsters, detective. I free them." Graves kept her gun steady. "You're manipulating them, just like you manipulated your mother, your stepfather, Jonas, the Porters." Lily's smile vanished. "You still don't get it, do you? They made me. They built me. Every hand that hurt me, every lie that fed me, each one carved something out until nothing real was left. I'm just showing the world its own reflection." Before Graves could answer, the hooded man lunged. The gun went off once, twice, then chaos. Graves fell backward into the snow, the world spinning as a flashlight hit the ground and rolled away, its beam slicing through the white. The man collapsed beside her, blood blooming across his chest. Lily didn't flinch. She scooped up the crying child, her expression almost tender. "You'll understand soon," she said softly. "Step 4 was never about me." And with that, she vanished into the trees, leaving Graves bleeding in the cold. When backup arrived 30 minutes later, Lily and the girl were gone. Only the box of photos remained and something else buried beneath it. A folded piece of paper. On it were the words, "Step 4. The one who hunts becomes the hunted." Graves survived, but barely. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, missing her heart by inches. During her recovery, she couldn't shake the last thing Lily had said. Step 4 was never about me. Months later, her worst fear was realized. One by one, members of her investigative team began to vanish. First her partner, then the forensic analyst, then the profiler. Each disappearance left behind a single note in Lily's handwriting. "Do you still feel safe?" Every instinct told Graves that Lily was leading her towards something, a final confrontation. Step 5. The end of the pattern. And then, one spring evening, a package arrived at her home. No return address, no markings. Inside was a VHS tape. The label read only, "Watch Alone." The screen flickered to life with static, then cleared. A dimly lit room, a camera facing a wooden chair, and sitting in it was Rosie, the little girl. She looked straight into the lens, silent for nearly a minute. Then, in a voice eerily calm for her age, she said, "Mommy says we're almost done." The tape ended. Graves sat in the dark long after the screen went black. She realized then that Lily hadn't vanished into the world she'd planted herself in it. Every letter, every step, every murder wasn't an ending, it was a seed. And somewhere, those seeds were beginning to grow. It began quietly, as all terrible things do. Across the Midwest, strange disappearances started making headlines again. Families vanishing overnight, homes left unlocked, meals half-eaten, televisions still flickering. No ransom notes, no signs of struggle. Only one detail connected them. In every house, detectives found a single sheet of paper pinned to a mirror, handwritten in crimson ink, Step 5. Detective Eleanor Graves returned to active duty despite her superior's objections. Her left arm was still weak, her nights haunted by the echo of the child's voice. "Mommy says we're almost done." She studied each new case obsessively. The handwriting matched Lily's perfectly. The method was precise, clinical, ritualistic. But what disturbed her most was the pattern. Each family bore eerie resemblance to Lily's own childhood dynamic: a mother, a stepfather, and a daughter. It wasn't random, it was repetition, a dark reenactment carved into the fabric of the country. Then, one morning, a letter arrived at headquarters addressed directly to her. Inside was a photograph, her own house, taken from the tree line behind her property. On the back, scrawled in blood-red ink, were the words, "You forgot the first rule of family, detective. Never turn your back on what you created." Graves froze, because in that moment, she understood something horrifying. Step 5 wasn't about Lily's revenge on the past. It was about succession, passing on the sickness. And if the pattern held true, it meant Rosie, sweet, silent. Rosie wasn't a victim anymore. She was an heir. The following night, a neighbor reported seeing lights flicker inside an abandoned farmhouse 20 miles north of Cleveland, the same area where Lily had last been spotted. Graves didn't wait for backup this time. She drove alone through the storm, headlights slicing through sheets of rain, her pulse drumming like thunder. The house loomed at the end of a gravel road, its windows black, its roof sagging under the weight of time. Inside, the air was cold and damp. The smell of rot clung to every surface. Graves's flashlight swept across the walls, covered in photographs and newspaper clippings, hundreds of them. Every face from every case Lily had ever touched. Victims, police, journalists. And in the center of it all, like a shrine, hung a framed picture of Graves herself, eyes crossed out in black paint. Beneath it, scrawled in jagged letters, "Mother of the New World." A sound echoed from upstairs, soft footsteps, childlike giggles. Graves raised her weapon and climbed slowly. The upper hallway was lined with dolls, old, porcelain, their faces cracked and smeared with ash. Each one wore a tiny paper tag around its neck: Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, until finally Step 5. The last doll sat at the end of the hall, and beside it, a door slightly ajar. She pushed it open. The room was lit by candles, arranged in a perfect circle. In the center sat Rosie, now older, perhaps 8 or 9, her eyes reflecting the flames. In her hands, she held the same teddy bear from before, its fur matted and torn, its button eyes missing. And standing behind her, like a ghost made flesh, was Lily Carver, pale, unblinking, her expression serene. "You finally came," Lily whispered. Graves steadied her voice. It's over, Lily. Whatever you've done, whatever this is, it ends tonight. Lily smiled faintly, almost pitying. You still think this is about revenge, about pain? No, detective. This is about continuity. You hunt monsters, but you never ask where they come from. Do you know what Rosie told me the night she was taken? She said she heard her father hurting her mother, just like I did, just like every one of them did. The world breeds us, detective. You can't kill what keeps being born. Graves took a cautious step forward, eyes locked on Rosie. You can still stop this, Lily. She doesn't have to become you. But Lily only tilted her head. She already is. Rosie rose slowly, her small hands stained with something dark. She placed the teddy bear on the floor between them. Graves's light caught a glint of metal inside, wires, nails, pieces of glass embedded deep into its stuffing. A child's toy turned into a weapon. Step 5, Lily whispered. The rebirth. And in that instant, the candles flickered out. The room plunged into darkness. A single scream tore through the night, then silence. When police finally arrived hours later, they found the farmhouse burned to the ground. No bodies, no traces of Rosie or Lily. Only a charred wall fragment remained, with 5 words seared into the wood. Mothers make monsters, always. Weeks passed. Graves was presumed dead, though no remains were ever confirmed. Yet months later, reports began surfacing: strange fires, vanished families, small towns whispering about a woman and a child traveling together under new names. Some claimed the woman's hair was black now. Others said the child never spoke but smiled at funerals. No arrests were ever made. The files remain open. And if you ever find yourself alone on a back road at night, headlights catching a glimpse of a woman and a little girl by the trees, don't stop. Don't roll down your window. Don't ask if they need help, because some roads don't lead back home. If this story left your heart pounding or your mind unsettled, make sure you subscribe to Dark History HD, where truth bleeds through the cracks of history. Hit the like button to keep the darkness alive. Share this story if you dare, and tell me in the comments, do you believe evil is born or is it made?